Hello everyone, my name is Dan, or as some of you might know me online, Captain Aileron. I'm standing outside the entrance to Eastport, Maine, the easternmost city in the United States. But what a lot of people may not realize, though, is that for a short time back in 2001, this city went by a different name. It went by the name of Sunrise, and served as the backdrop of the reality competition television series on Fox known as Murder in Small Town X. A lot of time has passed since that series aired. It only ran for 8 episodes during the year 2001, but the series captivated me and continues to do so to this day. And that's why I'm here, to see all the different filming locales. I'm going to be traveling around all over the city over the next couple of days, and we're going to find as many of the places that were featured in the series as possible, and I hope you'll enjoy the journey with me. We'll start with the most visible and iconic symbol that remains of the series today, this wooden fisherman statue located on Water Street. It was commissioned and installed for Mystex, but was ultimately left behind and remains proudly in Eastport to this day. In Episode 3, Abby Flint's stolen car was brought here, and Jimmy Tinker had a prolific breakdown at the sight of the car, where he grabbed Mary Elizabeth Merchant, and they had to be separated by William Lambert and Drew Chambers. One set of envelopes from the killer was also found on it. In 2005, the statue was restored by the city of Eastport and now serves as a memorial to the winner of the series, Angel. And I'm going to show you the plaque right here on the pedestal. In memory of a courageous hero and a brilliant contestant. The statue has been repainted on occasion. Most photos of it online show it wearing the blue coat it had during the series run, but sometime between 2021 and 22 it was repainted with this more traditional yellow coat. It also used to be illuminated at night by a set of lights pointed upward around the pedestal, but those have been removed. Too bad, because it really is a beautiful piece of art that has come to symbolize Eastport in many ways, and would look great lit up at night. This is Horn Run Brewing, a popular brew pub in downtown Eastport, and while it has played a few different roles since 2001, this was in fact the building that served as the investigators' headquarters where they lived and worked during their stay in Sunrise. Bottom floor had working and living space, including a dining table and a hot tub on that patio there. Though it was enclosed during the series, it's now open. The second floor was mostly bedrooms, and the top floor served as the meeting area, or war room, where they handled much of the investigation. There was a wooden sign shaped like a ship's wheel that hung above the door marked Sunrise Cargo Company when it served as headquarters. Now, obviously, that's long gone, but I heard that when production wrapped up, a yard sale of props and other memorabilia was held, and I bet that sign was among the most coveted items. I'd like to think it's still in the possession of a passionate local collector. Beyond that, though, the outer facade hasn't changed a whole lot. It's still got its distinctive 4 archways and the door through the third from the left. But the red and yellow stained glass above the door and windows has been replaced with standard clear glass, presumably to let in more natural light for customers. More or less it is unchanged on the outside, but inside the stairway leading to the second floor is now blocked off and only accessible from the outside. I heard, though, that the upper floor can be rented for vacations, so if you want to stay where the contestants stayed, have a look online, because you just might find that opportunity. Here it is, the Flint family house, easily one of the most important locales in the entire series. It was in this house at the very beginning of Episode 1 that the events that set the whole series in motion took place. Nate Flint would have met his end just on the inside of that front door, his hand leaving a bloody smear on the curtains, followed by his daughter Abby in the upstairs bedroom, and presumably his wife Carmen as well. It was also here in Episode 7 where suspect Mary Elizabeth Merchant was murdered right under Alan and Katie's noses near the kitchen's back door, and Alan came back here again in Episode 8 to play the final killer's game, where he found the burnt man's third and final film. Suffice to say, many key series events took place in this house. Now, I was surprised to learn that this house is just a short walk from the downtown core, and on the very same street as much of the historic district. And I'll show you an angle that didn't appear in the series. That street right down there is Water Street, which leads you right back into the historic district. So all the investigators would have had to do was walk straight up one street to reach this house. The house is getting repainted, but it still has some of the same color that it had in the series, and the exterior itself is mostly unchanged. A few other changes have since taken place, however. For one, the fence that was in the front yard at the time of filming is no longer here. And there also used to be two large trees that lined the walkway to the front door. You can, however, still see the stumps from them, though. They're still very much there. I guess they got too big for the yard. They've started to replant, as you can see here. Still, given how well they blended fantasy with reality in the series, it's easy to imagine that at some point the Flints would have sat up there on that very porch and enjoyed some nice ocean views with the Blodgetts or the Tinkers. Speaking of the Blodgetts, Lyda Rose Blodgett was the Flints' next-door neighbor. She would have lived in that yellow house right over there behind the tree. So we'll go take a look at that one next. This is the house that Lyda Rose Blodgett lived in. She lived alone, although her late husband Oscar might have lived here before his untimely death in 1971. Angel, Jeff, and Shirley came here in Episode 1 to interview Lyda, along with Lillian Tinker, about the Flint family murders and to collect witness statements. Of course, the investigators had to return here in Episode 4 to investigate Lyda's own murder. Hers, in my opinion, was the most horrid crime scene in the series, with the sheer amount of destruction and blood left behind. The fact that the killer shaved her head in the house made it all the more ghastly, so kudos to the art department for that one. The house was painted yellow during the series filming, and still is today. It had some noticeable weathering on the eaves troughs, and also in between the two upper floor windows back in '01. Really made it look like it hadn't been the best maintained, but that might have lent itself well to the house's character, and made sense if Oscar was meant to be the handy person in the Blodgett household. In any case, it's still the same color, looking a bit sharper than it did before, though a bit of paint on the north side might help. Just for the sake of perspective, the house is just up the street and across from the Flint house, which is right there, with Water Street running straight down there to the historic district. This is the former Boynton High School, which operated from 1847 to 1917. In the years since, it served many different purposes for the city of Eastport. It was a municipal planning office fairly recently, and for a while it even served as the city hall for Eastport. Now that was during the 2000s, and as a result it ended up playing the role of town hall for Sunrise during Murder in Small Town X. This was the first place the investigators visited when they arrived in Sunrise. And viewers who saw the first episode might recall those distinctive windows on the building next door. They were always in view whenever there were shots of people going inside Town Hall. Now, when the investigators first arrived in Sunrise, they would have come from that direction there and straight down this road, and driven into the parking lot just on this side of the building that we're walking towards. This building was ultimately the site of many key scenes in the series. The most memorable one actually just happened inside the main door that's about to come into view here. There's the door. Andrew would have had his infamously frightening encounter with G.D. Thibodeau just inside of that door as they were going inside for the first meeting. Among the other events here included various town meetings and Mayor Bowden presenting Angel with his prize money and keys to his new car after winning the game. Now, the building has been repainted since the filming of the series. It looks like it's been repurposed into private residences. I can understand them wanting to preserve this building, though, as it obviously has had a very long and important history to the people of Eastport. And today, the actual Eastport Town Hall is down on Washington Street, closer to the historic district. This block of buildings here, now hosting the Eastport Breakwater Gallery and the Ann Dalton Gallery, housed a number of small businesses during the filming of Mystax, the most prominent of which was Drew Chambers' nightclub, the Sunset Club, which was in this unit on the far right. To put it into perspective, the investigators' headquarters is right down there in that building there, so it was just a short walk just to get up here. Now, the Sunset Club was the scene of numerous events, some of which got rather violent. G.D. Thibodeau and William Lambert had a scuffle here in Episode 1, and in Episode 6, Prudence Connor launched one of the sweepers right through that front door window when he invaded her personal space. She wasn't having any of it from them, especially after what happened to her friend Thibodeau and her ongoing feud with Hayden DeBeck. I do feel bad for Drew having to clean up the mess, though. I don't think any of these other units played much of a role in the series, other than maybe Civic Address 99 right over there. I believe that was Building 99, which leads to the upstairs units. Thibodeau would have met Alan at the top of those stairs and gave him his alibi for the Flint murders. The only other event that I can recall happening here was in Episode 3, when Frank Kovic and Sam Larrabee were shown arguing in front of the third unit from the right, which would be this one here, now hosting the Ann Dalton Gallery. It was hard to make out on screen, but it looked like it was marked as an attorney's office, so it might have been intended to be Deanna Harris' office, but it wouldn't make the final cut of the series. Welcome to Hillside Cemetery, the largest cemetery in Eastport. It's actually quite unique, as it has a street running right through the middle of it, High Street, with burial plots on either side of the road. Now, it would have been in this cemetery, although it was called Leawood Cemetery in the series, that Carmen Flint's funeral would have been held in Episode 2. So we're going to take a little stroll in here and see what we can see. Now, from what I can tell, the funeral was held in this section, the southeast section of the cemetery. I don't know if you can see from here, but there is actually a service road just south of where I'm standing. I believe it was there that Hayden DeBeck's limousine pulled in, and DeBeck stepped out to deliver a rather self-serving eulogy just moments after William Lambert had done the same thing. The funeral would have been held just around here where the camera currently points. And if you can see those houses over there, at one point Alan followed G.D. Thibodeau in that direction and had a brief argument with him to distract him while other investigators were searching his cabin. That, of course, was to keep him from going home. It was also implied in the series that Oscar Blodgett's grave was located in this cemetery, but it was actually in a different one called Bayside Cemetery. It's a smaller cemetery to the north of here, close to the water. Angel and Andrew went there with Lyda to visit Oscar's grave, so we'll go check it out next. Bayside Cemetery is a much smaller cemetery than Hillside. You enter from that road there, and it ends down here in a circle with a flagpole flying Old Glory, and lovely views of the water just beyond it. Now, it was here in this cemetery on the west side, and right about here roughly, that Oscar Blodgett's grave was located. There's no sign of it ever being here, though. To be honest, I was hoping that there might still be a marker here, kind of like the stone for Ebenezer Scrooge that was left in a UK cemetery after the filming of A Christmas Carol, but alas, it's been removed. Now, based on where the investigators were patrolling the perimeter, they walked by the woods over there, and also, if you see those three markers on the left side of the frame with the tree beyond them, they walked right past those, and the grave was just in front of it or so. So based on that, it probably would have been roughly where I'm currently standing, and still keeping some distance from the road there as well. There was one plot, though, that did catch my attention in the cemetery. I don't think this was Oscar's, though, as it's too far back from the road and too close to the woods. But it looks like there might have been a burial here at one point, and it may simply be an unmarked grave. Still, hard not to wonder, given the condition of the ground. This is the Commons, which contains a craft shop on the left that you can see here, and the Northern Maine Development Commission offices on the right. Now, this building is on Water Street in the heart of Eastport's historic district, but the two units had very different roles in misdecs, however. The unit on the left, the craft shop, served as Mayor Bowden's taxidermy gallery and antique shop, while the unit on the right was Sunrise Medical, Dr. Neva Bowden's medical practice. Now, the investigators questioned Lyda Rose Blodgett here in Episode 2 after they discovered that her husband's body had been stolen, which cast suspicion on Hayden DeBeck as possibly the one who took him. Sadly, it was also here in Episode 6 where the killer murdered G.D. Thibodeau after Kristen brought him here from his cabin. On the mayor's side, there was a large green clown sign that hung on the trim to the left of the main entrance, presumably for his clown persona that didn't make it into the show. Kristen and Brian came here to question the mayor about Nate Flint's severed fingers in Episode 3, and were greeted with a display of preserved animal specimens with the whimsical backdrop of a funhouse. I guess it would be fair to say that Mayor Bowden had a wide array of interests. Now, when they left the shop, they would have simply walked down Water Street past the fisherman's statue to get back to headquarters over that way. Welcome to Ray's Mustard Mill Museum, a working old-time mustard factory and shop. They sell a wide variety of mustards, salsas, and other pantry items. However, this place was also known as the Old Mustard Mill in Murder in Small Town X, and was the place Andrew went to play the killer's game in Episode 2. He would have walked in right through that front door there, but unfortunately, as he made his way through, the killer was waiting in the back room, and he was eliminated from the game. Now, at the time of filming the series, there was a wooden canopy erected over the main entrance that was adorned with white lights. The canopy was there until at least '07, but it has since been removed. There was also a step up to the main entrance, but that may have been fixed for ADA access. There was also a wooden sign just to the left of the main entrance, which is now gone, but nevertheless the business end of the building remains. Now, for my visit today, as you can see, they're renovating the whole building, but it had a retail space in front and a factory in the back. As far as I know, the factory is still there, but it's currently closed to the public. Even so, until it reopens, they do have an additional outlet on Water Street in downtown Eastport, so feel free to go check that out if you do want to try some of their products. This is S.L. Wadsworth and Son, not only one of the oldest operating businesses in Eastport, but actually the oldest ship chandlery in America and the oldest retail business in the entire state of Maine. It's been in business since 1818 and family run for 6 generations, according to its website. Now, of course, an iconic shop like this had to play an important role in Murder in Small Town X as well. This hardware store, which now has a gift shop attached to it, you can see there, played the role of Tinker's Hardware, which was owned by Lillian Tinker and managed by her son Jimmy, who was Abby Flint's boyfriend. Now, the investigators came here in episode 3 to question Jimmy about his role in the disappearance of Abby's car, as well as to plant a listening device on his jacket. Now, it was only featured in that one episode, but an interesting thing about it is that when they filmed here, they didn't change any of the S.L. Wadsworth retailer markings that were in the windows. The store's name was printed in very small lettering just along the upper part of the arches of the windows, and I guess they felt they weren't going to show up on the cameras they used in those days. Keep in mind the series was filmed in 2001, and if you were to look at it on Google Street View with 2007 imagery, the markings are actually still there. Now, those markings are gone now, but I suppose the owners of S.L. Wadsworth don't need to worry about people not knowing who they are, especially if they've been around here since 1818. Even so, they've completely redone the front windows as they now extended just below the second floor, as you can see there. And if you look carefully at the diamond markings on those pillars, it gives away the location of the store. I believe those diamond symbols have something to do with the original owner of the building, presumably the Kamek family of Eastport, as the name, Kamek, is embedded right in the brickwork of the building, as well as those diamonds featuring quite prominently in the overall design. Even so, this is where Tinker's Hardware was, and also worth noting is that S.L. Wadsworth has this adjacent unit here that now serves as their gift shop. They only acquired it in 2004, and I'm not sure what was there before that, but during the filming of Mystex, this is where the office of the Sunrise Herald would have been, which was the newspaper that Frank Kovic worked for. Or rather, he did work there until William Lambert got tired of all the unflattering coverage and bought the paper, allowing his lawyer, Deanna Harris, to relieve Frank of his duties, and in quite prolific fashion, I might add. Still, this was also the place where Frank had a conversation with investigator Brian. He told him that he had confronted Lyda Rose Blodgett after the old lady revealed his affair with Sam Larrabee, and also about Nate Flint's many offshore money transfers. The sign for the paper would have been in the upper left corner, just from the main door there. Those windows weren't visible in 2001. I think they were just solid wood panels at the time. They may have just been covering over the windows, or they may have been installed. Still, it does allow a lot more natural light into the store. I will say that the staff were quite open to talking about the series with me as well, which was very nice of them. This private residence, just off Water Street, on a little side street called Woodman Place, played a small but not insignificant role in Murder in Small Town X. This served as the home of Mary Elizabeth Merchant, Abby Flint's best friend. In episode 3, when the team was conducting surveillance on Jimmy Tinker, he and Mary Elizabeth left the Sunset Club one evening and proceeded north, eventually arriving at this house. Now I'll show you where it is. Woodman Place is right here, intersecting with Water Street, and if you look down in this direction, you can see the Eastport Post Office, and the Sunset Club would have been just beyond it on the left. Now, investigator Jeff would have tailed them all the way up this road here, and was ultimately treated to a somewhat revealing show of romance through an open curtain when he got to the house. Now, pinpointing this place was a bit tricky. I had to follow the movements of Jimmy and Mary and note the buildings that Jeff was passing along the way, and being on an unphotographed side street didn't help either. But nonetheless, this is it. Looks like a duplex, with Mary Elizabeth having lived in the right side unit, based on which door they entered. This is Dana Street at the corner of Water Street, and this is the Masonic Block building currently undergoing restoration. In Murder in Small Town X, however, this building stood in as the location where Kristen played the killer's game in Episode 3, the Sunrise Players Theater. Her instructions were to take a taxi to the gazebo on Dana Street, which is still there to this day. The taxi that brought her here, though, would have actually parked on Key Street, a small parking lot by the library building over there, and she would have passed the gazebo from the south, walked across this lawn here, and then across the street, and then entered through that doorway on the right that has the lamp right above the entrance. Now, the theater was described on the show's website as being directly across from the Sunrise Police Station, which is actually this building right here behind the trees. We'll be talking about that one in a second. It was here, in the theater, that Kristen had survived her second killer's game and recovered the burnt man's first film. So if you were to turn left at the road there, you'd be right in the heart of downtown Eastport's historic district, so it wasn't far from headquarters. Overall, though, I'm not really sure what this building will be used for once the restoration is complete, but Eastport obviously has big plans, so time will tell. Now, much like Eastport's actual town hall at the time of filming, a real Eastport police station served as the station for Sunrise as well, and this former bank building is where it was. Now, the building can be found right here at the corner of Dana and Water Street. You can see the entrance to the theater we just looked at a moment ago, right there, and the historic district is just down that way. Now, the building itself is identifiable by those distinctive stone adornments on the sides of the main entrance, and it would have been here in Episode 7 that Alan and Katie came to interrogate Reverend Rusty Crandall after he claimed to be responsible for the Flint murders in one of his sermons. Now, of course, even with Chief Duncan's help, they found Rusty's statements to be inconsistent with the crime scenes, and so they had to let him go. Come to think of it, it's kind of ironic that a show all about murder got all the way to the penultimate episode before there was even one scene filmed at the police station. But that's how it happened. We're back on Water Street now, just a couple of doors down from Ray's Mustard and Enid's Cauldron of Curiosities, at this vacant property. Now, this was the property that housed Sam Larrabee's diner in Murder in Small Town X. It didn't appear all that clearly in the series until Episode 5, and while its highly visible red and white striped foundation has long since been repainted, the facade stands out for the ornamental woodwork on either side of it. You can see it quite clearly. This was all present in the series, but obviously a different color. Now, there were some informal talks held with Sam and other suspects here, but easily the most important event that took place was when Angel and Alan entered the ransacked diner in Episode 8 and found the killer's final message waiting for them on a VHS tape, which set up the final confrontation for both of them. Now, just to clarify, Horn Run Brewing, where the investigators stayed, is right across the street, right there, while the hardware store and the Sunrise Herald newspaper office would have been right down there, on the corner. But the thing about this place that really stands out is actually what's inside, so we're going to cross the street and have a look. Yep, the soda fountain, the bar, the stools, and the booths are all still there, the same ones that were used in the show. You can even still see some glassware in the cabinet in the back. Now, I heard from a local resident that this place had actually been a real drugstore and soda fountain many years ago, and that it was frequented by the Roosevelt family, who had a summer cottage near Lubeck. Now, even after production wrapped up, apparently nothing else moved in here, and everything is, well, left behind. Of course, it could have been here before production, I'm not sure, but This is still easily the most remarkable discovery I've made on this tour so far. I don't know why it hasn't been taken over or why nothing has been removed. Maybe they deemed it to have historic value as a place the Roosevelts visited. Nevertheless, everything is all still here, seemingly frozen in time, waiting for Sam to come back. The main pier of downtown Sunrise was known simply as Municipal Pier in Murder in Small Town X. I don't know if the real one here for Eastport has a formal name or not, but most of the city's commercial and leisure vessels can be found here, and it is still very much a working pier today. Among the series events that took place here included the recovery of Carmen Flint's body and Prudence Connor and William Lambert killing a shark with a bang stick, which alerted the investigators to a possible murder weapon. G.D. Thibodeau's ferry was also moored here for when the investigators took trips to places like Dog Island and Lubeck, which stood in for the fictional town of Grady, Maine. You get a pretty outstanding view of the historic district from over here, though. These are all the backs of several buildings we've looked at already, and the fisherman statue can be seen over there as well. Welcome to Away Down East Lodge and Cabins, located on South River Road in Pembroke, Maine. This was a very important site in the filming of Murder in Small Town X, as it played the part of Trekker's Motor Lodge, the motel where the mysterious burnt man made his films and ultimately ended his life in 1971. Unfortunately, there was no place here to safely pull my car over and film while still remaining in a public space, so all I could do was capture these still photos. The burnt man had stayed in a cabin with green trim and windows on either side of the front entrance. The investigators and Frank Kovic examined the cabin in episode 4 with the manager of the motel, Bill Thompson. It's quite possible that the cabin they filmed in was cabin 6, the middle cabin seen here, now sporting blue trim, but it otherwise still matches the exterior of the cabin used. The other possibility is that the burnt man scenes were filmed here in cabin 8, which appears to be derelict and out of service now. It still has green trim and also matches the exterior shots, but there didn't appear to be anyone around that I could ask about it. Now, I assumed for years that this motel was created just for the series, but oh boy, was I wrong. It was an actual working business then, and still is today. The only reason I found it, though, was because of a scene in episode 6 where the manager called the investigators and mentioned the motel was on Route 1. Turns out, it's on Route 1 in real life. Who'd have thought? Welcome to the town of Lubeck, Maine, south and across the bay from Eastport. This was the town that stood in for Sunrise's neighbor community, the town of Grady, Maine, which played a big role in episode 4 of Mystex. Grady was home to William Lambert's strip bar, $2 Bills, which was located in this building right here. Angel and Kristen would have been the first investigators to visit this town. They would have arrived by boats at the pier and walked right down the street here. They would have passed Dockside Treasures there to reach the bar's back entrance. Now, the back entrance wasn't accessible today for filming, but this would have still been the building. The investigators returned later in the episode for the casino night event that Lambert hosted, and Frank Kovic was thrown out of that door after an altercation with the owner. Even so, this is what the building looks like now. It's currently being renovated inside and out. Hard to say what they plan to do with it, but I suppose time will tell. A few changes have also been made to the surrounding buildings. When the series was filmed in 2001, this building here was painted a brownish red and was a light green on Google Street View in 2007, but has undergone more changes in the years since. Now, unfortunately, we didn't get to see a whole lot more of the town of Lubeck in the filming of the series, but for what it's worth, I've certainly enjoyed visiting. West Kawadi Head Lighthouse is located south of Lubeck, and despite its name, is part of the easternmost point of the continental United States. The eastern side is part of Canada, in case you're wondering. This was the place where Kristen was sent for the third time to play the Killer's Game in Episode 4, which is actually quite a trip from Eastport compared to some of the other locations used for the Killer's Game. She ended up climbing to the top of the lighthouse, you see there, and then discovered the killer's clue on the surrounding grounds. Now, at first I thought it was on the grounds right here in front of the lighthouse, but I think it was actually a bit further down, there in that much grassier patch to the left. The clue, of course, was the monument with the name Duchamp marked in blood. Now, this lighthouse was known as Grady Point Lighthouse in the series, and was revisited in the daytime in Episode 5 when Kristen and Angel came out here to talk to the lighthouse keeper about the monument and the Duchamp family. He, of course, told them the story of the family, but only as he heard it. Now, being a real working lighthouse, it has not changed much since filming, with its distinctive red and white markings. And there's a bell just in front of the building that you can see right there. It was present in the filming of the series as well. This was one of the hardest locations to pinpoint because there was no street view coverage of the street it's on, and nearly all the structures are now gone today, but what you see here is all that remains of General Hayden DeBeck's Mine Science Organization. The compound, as it was called, was a two-story white building with black trim that had a large courtyard and a water tower-like structure in the back that was also about 2 stories high. I was hoping maybe the water tower still existed, but as you can see, it's long gone. Even so, you can tell this is where the compound was, based on the presence of this building over here, this red building with the 2 white garage doors. Now, that building used to be a fire station for the city of Eastport a number of years ago, according to a sign on it. The bus that would have brought investigators Jeff and Alan, along with Sam Larrabee, would have driven up that roadway past the station, and it would have stopped right about there to let them out. Now, that would have been in Episode 6, and they endured many agonizing hours of physical and mental initiation in order, strength, and logic. Now, for their efforts, they finally got face-to-face with Hayden DeBeck, who ultimately only gave them about 4 minutes of his time and very little information. But the meeting itself was one of my personal favorite moments in the whole series. You could have cut the tension in that room with a knife, as the character of DeBeck was such an imposing figure. Jeff would return here later in that same episode to play the Killer's Game, and found the logo of the OSL. He would return here again for the final Killer's Game in Episode 8, but sadly that time he would not be so lucky. I guess it seems only fitting that a building where a cult gathered would be gone completely, but amazingly the chimneys are still intact. Otherwise, there's not much left to see here, but I do wish I knew what the original purpose was, if any, of the building that once stood here. In the series, the address of the shadowy organization known as the Order of the Scarlet Lupin was given as 1102 Kiley Street by Orlando Wist. While many of the street names in the series lore closely reflected their real-life counterparts, this one did not. In Episode 7, Angel and Jeff went to investigate the OSL's former HQ, and they found it right here at 6 Boynton Street. They would have gone in through that door there, but interestingly, have a look down there. That's Horn Run Brewing, where the investigators' headquarters was located, so all they had to do was cross the street and walk right up this hill to find the entrance. The Erie Meeting Hall was upstairs and was convincingly caked in dust from years of abandonment, and contained a vital audio recording listing the leaders of the OSL at the time of their disbandment. There's currently a community office or something up here nowadays, or at least there was in the 2000s. I'd be curious to know if the room that the OSL was allegedly based out of is now used for more constructive community activities, or at the very least I'd like to think so. The next door gallery is also located in this building, although I don't think it was here in 2001. But even so, you can tell this was the door based on the placement of the power meters, and the windows you can see just running down from the incline of the doorway. Up on Washington Street, just outside the downtown area, is this former service station. It sits across the street from the former church, which now contains the Eastport Arts Center. And if you look down Washington Street, you can just catch a glimpse of the historic district there. But during Mystex, this place played the role of Prudence Connor's garage. In episode 7, Hayden DeBeck's wrecked limo was brought here after the crash that took place just moments before he became the killer's next victim. Connor, of course, had an ongoing feud with DeBeck and proceeded to smash it further. Alan and Katie scoured the wreckage and uncovered a shell casing, but little else of interest. The building looks mostly unchanged from filming, although that name Cummings was covered by a sign. There wasn't very much of the garage shown in the series, but it was still white and needed very few changes to look like a working station again. And those overhead lights were present in the show, and still standing today as well. At the end of Country Road in the south part of Eastport, one can find this facility belonging to Inland Lobster, one of the largest wholesale lobster companies in Maine. Before it was built, however, there was a collection of derelict buildings on this parcel of land that served as the remains of the old Kingfisher Cannery in Murder in Small Town X. Now, as of 2007, the cannery buildings were still standing, according to Google Street View, but as you can see today, the land has been repurposed. This piece of land was a significant focal point in the series. Not only was it the place where William Lambert wanted to build his new hotel, but several other events took place there. Jeff and Stacy went there in episode 4 to talk to C.R. Flint about the 1941 Miracle Fire and the history of the cannery. Jeff played the killer's game there in episode 7, during which he uncovered the OSL's hidden vault inside the cannery. And of course, in episode 8, they discovered in that same vault the remains of the asphyxiated Duchamp family. Probably for the best it has been redeveloped. If those events had really happened and the building's still there, I'd be getting chills. Just to put things into perspective, though, I couldn't actually go down to the facility itself since it's a private road, but you can access it from Prime Street here if you want to see it. This road was also the site of an important moment in the series. It was on this road that G.D. Thibodeau almost caused an accident with X-Ray when he wanted to arrange a meeting with the investigators. That would have happened somewhere along this stretch here. From this area of Prime Street, you can get an excellent view of the parcel of land where the Kingfisher Cannery once stood, but the real reason why we're here right now is to see this building right here. It's private and not really accessible, but that was Frank Kovic's boathouse. Katie, Alan, and Brian witnessed Frank and his wife having an argument down there on the beach, and of course it was here that Alan came on the final night of investigation to confront Frank as the suspected killer. When he got inside, he found evidence that Frank had been doing his own investigation the whole time and was actually innocent. When looking at this property on Street View with '07 imagery, you could actually see the derelict Kingfisher Cannery buildings in the background, although, as I mentioned, the land has been repurposed and now belongs to Inland Lobster. But that would have been the staircase the investigators walked down, and the beach that they would have met Frank on. Boathouse hasn't changed a whole lot in 22 years. Looks about the same, but I bet it looks a lot different on the inside now. This is where it all came to an end for the investigators and for the Sunrise Killer. It was in this house at the very end of Prime Street where lived businessman William Lambert, and from where he planned out his reign of terror on the town. Angel was the lone investigator who had the privilege of confronting Lambert, and it was in this house where he uncovered the most ghastly dinner party ever created for cable television. Fortunately, he also found Sam Larrabee, frightened but alive, and took her to safety as Chief Duncan went after Lambert. If you want to know what I meant by the most ghastly dinner party, well, just go watch the series. Still, this is where everything came to fruition and where the truth was finally uncovered. Now, there were no photos of this house on Google Street View, but the scene of Angel walking uphill toward the garage confirms this must be the house. If you look over this way, you can see the hill he would have walked up, right from there. And he would have gone straight through the open gate here, and if you look carefully, you can see a green garage door. He would have entered the house through that garage, and it would have been right around there that the final moments of William Lambert's life took place. I can't quite see the window he would have fallen from, as it's partially obscured by the trees, but it should be there. Just to the right of the main gate here, you can see the stone wall, and this wall was actually present in the filming of the series. You see it just briefly in episode 8 when Angel is walking through the dark, but no, this was all here. So in a way, not a lot has changed about the property in the last 22 years. Now, I don't know who owns this house now, or whether it's even occupied, but it is a very large house that would surely have beautiful views of the bay, and so it seems quite fitting, I guess, for someone of Lambert's status. Still, even though all the events of the series were fictional, I'm still getting some eerie vibes standing here. I really can't help but wonder if the current owner of this house is aware of this house's place in television history. And so with that, we have now visited every Murder in Small Town X filming location I was able to locate, both in Eastport and in Lubeck. Unfortunately, there were a few locations I was not able to find, places like the Marine Supply Warehouse, Kingfisher Aquaculture, the Chicken Ranch, and perhaps most notably Thibodeau's Cabin. But in any case, I believe this is the most thorough revisiting of the series filming locations that's been done in recent years. I did this purely as a passion project because I do truly believe that Murder in Small Town X was a groundbreaking television series years ahead of its time that a lot of people didn't really fully appreciate for what it was back in 2001. And also to pay my respects to Angel, who was a truly great person who was a very deserving winner of the series, and it was very humbling to retrace the steps that he and his fellow contestants took. Before I conclude, though, there is one more location that I'm going to show you that is courtesy of Pat Battistini, the actor who portrayed G.D. Thibodeau. And as I make my way back to Canada, where I come from, I will be stopping there to have a look at it before I cross the border. So come with me for this final location that played a pivotal role in Murder in Small Town X. This is the final stop on our tour, the Calais Motor Inn in Calais, Maine. It's about a 30 to 35 minute drive from Eastport. It did not appear in the series, but it did play a pivotal role. This was the place where the actors who performed on Murder in Small Town X stayed during their work in Eastport. This was likely done to ensure that none of the actors were ever spotted by the investigators out of character or during their downtime. The illusion of the series would have been impacted quite negatively if that happened. Nevertheless, this is the place, and the actors had many great times here together while working on the show. With that, though, this is the final stop, so I just want to thank you all for following me on this journey through Eastport, Lubeck, and all the way back up here to Calais. I certainly hope you enjoyed reminiscing about Murder in Small Town X as much as I have. You might recall that Angel made a very memorable statement at the end of the series, reminding everyone that he was a firefighter, not an investigator. And if I might paraphrase the series winner, I'm an aviator and not a filmmaker. So I appreciate your journeying with me when I'm certainly not a pro at this. Once again, thank you for joining me, and all the best.